Anybody know? Oh yeah, he was talking about the gopis.
Okay.
We'll definitely finish chapter 9 today.
Oh yeah, we were like, it was Krishna was about to start.
Agyanam timirandasya Gyananjana salakaya Chaksurunmilitam yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tvodalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namah Yang Pravajantam Manupetam Apeta Krityam Vaipayano Virahakatarajuhava O Triti Tanmayataya Taravo Banedos Tang Sarvabhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi Bhaktyavina Aparadalakshay Chiptasya Kamadi Tarangamadye Kirpamai Tvang Sharanam Yang Brinde Namaste Charanaravindam Tavaivasmi Najivami Tambina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tam Nayamam Charanantike. Vishaka, can you come more in my periphery here? Yep. Like here's a seat right here. First, I offer my unlimited obeisances and the dust of the lotus feet of my most worshipful Diksha Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Asto Tadasat Shri Srimad Shalabhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the same unlimited obeisances in the dust of the lotus feet of my most worshipful Shiksha Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Asto Tadasat Shri Srimad Shalabhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, Shalabhakti Vigyan Bharati Goswami Maharaj, to our Param Gurudev Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, to all of our Gaudiya Guru Varga and all the assembled devotees. So today we are moving in our time machine back 5,000 years on the Battle of Kurukshetra. How did we get there? First, we were in Naimisharanya with the 88,000 sages. And before that, we were with Srila Vyasadeva, who presented the first 3 verses of the Bhagavatam, which is a glorification of Krishna and the Bhagavatam, which we also read Srila Gurudev's deeper and deepest meaning of that first verse beginning Janmadyasya Yataha, giving us the ultimate conclusion that Srimati Radhika, there's no absolute truth without Srimati Radhika. She's the most worshipable. If you want to read that deeper and deepest explanation, you can go to Secret Truths of the Bhagavatam. Then, throughout the first chapter, the sages inquired about the world's welfare in 6 excellent questions. In the second chapter, after glorifying his Guru and Guru Parampara, Sutta Goswami, who was inquired by the sages, presented devotional service and the Bhagavatam as the best donations from the Lord for the world's welfare. In chapter 3, he summarized the glories of 24 prominent incarnations of Krishna, which was one question of the sages to hear about them. And then that will, of course, be expanded as a fluffed out cottons as the cantos progress. The chapter culminates in establishing Krishna as the Supreme Lord, the cause of all other incarnations, who are like rivulets in the river. And then it also culminates in asserting the Bhagavatam as the residence of religion and knowledge after Krishna left the world. Chapter 4, because then the sages inquired, how did the Srimad Bhagavatam happen to be manifest? So chapter 4 discusses how Vyasadeva first lamented that he didn't feel fully satisfied by authoring and compiling his previous scriptures. And then he was visited by his Gurudev, who came in from the skyways, Narada Muni, who convinced him that he would be fully satisfied in his offerings to the world by writing the Srimad Bhagavatam, comparing Bhagavatam with other books being like the Pilgrimage of the Crows, and the Bhagavatam and related books being like the Pilgrimage of the Swans. In chapter 5, Narada proceeds to explain how he himself attained perfection, and that discussion is completed in chapter 6. After Narada leaves, Vyasadeva meditated in trance, seeing that all anarthas, all unwanted habits and thoughts, can go away by devotional service. He compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. Then the sages also were inquiring about how Parikshit Maharaj happened to be the first recipient, hearer of the Bhagavatam by Sukadeva Goswami, the spiritual master of Sutta Goswami and all the sages. And Sutta Goswami proceeds in chapter 7 to tell how that came to be by discussing Parikshit Maharaj's grandparents, the Pandavas, the war, the attempt to assassinate Parikshit Maharaj in the womb, how Krishna saved him, and then his grandfather Yudhisthira Maharaj's lament at the end of the war, blaming himself for the war, although the war was totally Krishna's desire to establish Yudhisthira Maharaj as the king of the world. Then once the war was over and Yudhisthira was established as the king, Krishna was just about to leave. That's when Parikshit Maharaj was attempted to be murdered in the womb of his mother by Aswatthama, by a Brahmastra weapon, which is a lot more able to hit its target than the modern atom bombs and other weaponry. And then after that was done, then Queen Kunti prayed throughout the 8th chapter, and we heard even our Srila Prabhupada singing so beautiful and spontaneously Queen Kunti's prayers of glorification of Krishna and asking him not to leave, because now that the calamities were apparently finished. She said, but of course, now that we won, there are still more enemies ready to attack. But her main argument was that we would rather have the calamities and you with us than no calamities and you not with us, because everything is beautified and glorified and made successful by your presence. So Krishna heard the prayers of Queen Kunti, and then Yudhisthira Maharaj stepped up, lamenting that he was the cause of millions of people dying, including innocent men, women, and children in the battle of Kurukshetra. So Krishna brought them all to Bhishma Dev, who was lying on the place of massacre, the battlefield, lying on a bed of arrows, and all the Pandavas came, sages from all over the universe came. Krishna, of course, was there, and Bhishma Dev pacified throughout the 9th chapter, which we're still in the middle of. Nope, we're at the ending. Bhishma Dev pacified Maharaj Yudhisthira that Krishna was the cause, inevitable time was the cause, and Krishna's the best friend of the Pandavas and all good. Then he proceeded on Yudhisthira Maharaj's inquiry to give some direction for the royal order and for all humans about the religious duties for success in life. Then this is all nothing. This material world is all illusion. Let me just focus my mind on Krishna, who was standing right there in front of him. And then he started glorifying Krishna in his different activities during the Battle of Kurukshetra, the activities preceding the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna's relationship with the gopis, and let's see where we are now. Word verse are we on? That's
942.
all right, but let's go back a couple to verse 40, because there it talks about the gopis, who are our Gaudiya Vaishnavas' most worshipful objects. So
You're gonna say that.
we're going to first recite the verses glorifying the benefits of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but as far as anybody on Zoom or live stream, I don't know if anybody's understanding.
Understanding.
You know, the verses that we read in glorification of the Bhagavatam. That's why, what? We made an announcement. Nobody responded to wanting the translations being sent to them. So I'm just going to quickly read the translations as well. Dharma prochita kaitavocha paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastuvamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayonamulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Parayarishvara Sadhyo Hridya Varujate Kritibi Sushushubi Stakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, the Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are pure at heart. This truth is reality distinguished from the illusion for the welfare of all, and such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient itself for God realization. What is the need for any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established in the heart. I think what we'll do every day is just translate one of the verses, because otherwise we'll never get to the Bhagavatam. Nigamakopataro galitam palam sukamakadam ritudrapasam yutam. Pivata bhagavatam rasamalayam mohuraho rasika bhuvi bhavaka. Sutu vacha yam pravajantam anupetam apeta krityam dvaipayano viraha kataru ajuhava putreti tanmayataya taravo vanedus tang sarva bhuta hridayam munimanatosmi yaksvanubhavam akila shruti saramekam Adhyatma Deepamati Tirthatam Tamondam Samsaranam Karunaya Paranaguyam Tam Vyasasranam Mayami Gurum Maninam Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Shinbatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Ridantasto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Sartsatam Krishna Swadharma Bhagate Dharma Gyanadibi Saha Kalonasta Drisham Mesha Puranarko Dunoditaha Anartamam Upasamam Shakshat Bhakti Yoga Madhoksaje Lokasya Janata Vidvangs Chakre Satvata Samhita. I'll translate this too. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, very interesting, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the absolute truth. Namami Devam Karunanidanam Tamalavarnam Suhitavataram Apara Samsara Samudra Setam Vajamahe Bhagavata Swarupam. Achyuta Prabhu, I was telling them the other day that your Guru Maharaj, he always chants this verse, this last one, Tamala Varnam, before any Srimad Bhagavatam class. And when he comes to the last word, as you know, sometimes he accentuates, he goes, Swarupam. Okay, here we are, 1940. Lalita Gati Vilasa Valguhasa Pranaya Nirikshana Kali Kalpitarumana Kritamanu Kritavatsa Unmadanata Praktam Nagana Kila Yashagopavadva. Let my mind be fixed on Lord Shri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Brajabhumi, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance. Muni Gana Nirpavarya Sankulenta Sadasi Dudistira Rajasuya Esam Arhanam Upadpeda Ikshaniyo Mama Drishi Gochara Esha Avira Atma. At the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, there was a great assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders. And in that great assembly, Lord Sri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incidents in order to keep my mind fixed upon the Lord. This is Bhishma Dev. He doesn't want to talk about material government and rules and regulations anymore. He just wants to, he knows I'm leaving my body. I'm not going to be thinking about ritualistic duties of a king. I want to think about Krishna. Verse 42. Tamimam mahamajam sarirabhajam hridi distitam atmakalpitanam Pratidrishamiva naiko darkamekam samadhigatosmi vaduta beda moha. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon the one Lord, Sri Krishna, now present before me, because I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. And the conception of duality, that there's something outside of Krishna or different gods, is due to ignorance of his inconceivable energy. Okay, then we come to 43. Sutta Uvacha Krishna evam bhagavati manova dristi vittivi atmanyatmanam avesha sontas his vasa uparamat. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishmadev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, actions, and thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. He didn't lose his identity. It just means he became one at heart. That's what it means by merged. Trying to see what the Sanskrit word of emerged. Avesha. Avesh means absorption in, full absorption and full sense of personal identity with. Like now we have Avesh in this body. We're hearing the Bhagavatam, but still our minds are on material things. Okay, 44. Sampajamanam agyaya bhishmam brahmani nishkale sarve bahuvuste tushnin vayasmi dinadhyaye. Knowing that Bhishmadev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the absolute truth, all present there became, in other words, he just entered into the Dwarka pastimes in Goloka Dwarka, which he was already there, but it's a pastime for teaching us conditioned souls. Knowing that Bhishma had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Absolute Supreme, all present there became silent like the birds at the end of the day. See, confirmed. The first sentence of Prabhupada's purport is to enter into or become merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. Confirmed. 45. Tatradundu vayom nedur deva manavavarita sasamsu sadavo ragyam katpe tu pushparitsata. Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect. From the sky fell showers of flowers. O descendant of Bhrigu, Shonaka. See, so again, or still, Sutta Goswami is speaking to all the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shonaka, who's a descendant of Bhrigu Muni, good family lineage. After performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishmadev, Maharaj Yudhisthira was momentarily overtaken by grief. All the great sages then glorified Lord Sri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Krishna within their hearts. Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhisthira at once went to his capital, Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. His uncle was, his aunt was Gandhari, and his uncle was, she's the mother of Duryodhana. Very interesting story about that. How her husband was blind, right, from birth, so, and by spirit as well. So because she didn't want to think herself greater than her husband, the chaste wife blindfolded herself. But because of her blindfolding her eyes, that austerity that she did, her eyes became so powerful. So she told her son, Duryodhana, come to me naked, and I will glance over you with my powerful eyes. I'll take off my blindfolds, and thus your body will become stronger than a thunderbolt, and no one will be able to defeat you in the war. So of course, Krishna being in everyone's heart, he knew about that. And so he said to, but of course, Gandhari is also a pure devotee. It's all for teaching us. So then Krishna saw Duryodhana going to his mother's place, and he said, what are you doing naked? Going to my mother. Don't you have any shame? At least put some lungi around your thighs, which he did. And then when she took off her blindfolds and she saw he was covered, she smiled, and she didn't get angry. She thought, this is the work of Krishna. So everything was powerful except for his thighs, and that's where Bhima bashed him in the thighs, and he thus died. So, and also her husband was also a treacherous person named, what's his name?
You mean her brother?
Her brother, no, her husband. The blind Dhritarashtra.
Oh,
Yeah, because he was just supporting his evil sons the whole time. Attachment. So he went and consoled them. Because Yudhisthira is known as Ajata Satru, he has no enemy from his side. After this, the great religious king, Maharaj Yudhisthira, executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes of royal principles, approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Sri Krishna. Approved by his uncle. Who's his uncle? Approved by his uncle. Dhritarashtra is not his uncle. He wouldn't want anything approved by his uncle.
But well, Gandhari's brothers wouldn't want anything approved by him either.
What?
Gandhari's brother would be his uncle.
Right, didn't the last.
Or her
Gandhari,
I'm listening.
Gandhari is the mother of Duryodhana, not Yudhisthira.
well,
Yudhisthira is the son of Pandu. Huh? They're cousins with Duryodhana. Let's see.
That would make Dhritarashtra his uncle.
He's not going to follow Dhritarashtra, believe me.
Are they considering?
Yeah, he consoled Dhritarashtra because of all the death of his sons. I'm thinking that it's probably Bhishma, grandfather. Uncle.
Maybe great uncle or something.
Let's say from his old uncle in the first word.
Hmm?
I don't see a name yet.
Well, approved by his uncle. It says his father, Paitamaham, his forefather.
By his uncle Dhritarashtra Pitra.
Huh?
In the line by line, the first word Pitra, by his uncle Dhritarashtra.
Well, he wouldn't have followed he wouldn't have followed his uncle. His uncle might have finally changed and said, okay, you're in charge. But that's about it. He was just attached to his evil. I see that Dhritarashtra's name is there.
So, yeah.
What does it say? In the
Dhritarashtra,
purple.
the father and the mother of Duryodhana, his brothers are the elder uncle and aunt of Maharaj Yudhisthira. The Bala Kukshetra, the celebrated couple, having lost all their sons and grandsons under the care of Maharaj Yudhisthira.
They were under his care. But they were under his care. And so they accepted him, but he wouldn't be under the guidance of their royal principles. I'm just trying to clarify the verse meaning.
That's
Let's read that. Where does it say that? I'm going to read that out loud. Where did you just read from?
Words
No, the purport, where?
for just from the beginning.
All right, Maharaj Yudhisthira was not a mere tax
Oh, I'm sorry,
collector.
I'm on 48.
You're on 48. Oh, 48.
49. Well, they're both referring.
They were
to
under
one.
him.
I think it might just be like a punctuation thing, because it might be. that
Yeah, it
they
could
were
be a
approved by
punctuation
his- they were
thing.
Approved by his uncle, like.
Of course. Because if we read in the Bhagavatam, he was just totally not following any religious principles. He approved there being attempted assassination in the house of Lack and so many other things. He sat right there when Draupadi was being attempted derobement of Draupadi. He had no scruples at all.
In the purport in the second paragraph, it says not only did Maharaj Yudhisthira follow the principles, but he also got approval from his uncle. So
Yeah,
they
because he
became
came
separate.
under he came under the care of Maharaj Yudhisthira, who now was understood that he was experienced in political affairs, but he had no religious principles. So it needs more elaboration.
I mean, it
He
says that
followed
they
the
were-
principles, but getting approval means that Dhritarashtra saw the light, and that's when Vidura actually convinced him to leave and go to the forest. Now you've lost everything. You lost your sons. They were evil. Now, get your spiritual life together. And then there's a whole section that we'll come to when Dhritarashtra goes to the forest and he starts meditating. He, has some more sense now. And so the fire comes within his body and he burns up, and Gandhari walks into the fire to do the sati rite. So it could be a punctuation thing, an editing thing. So that's the actual clarity on that. Of course, nothing's going to be clear until we do bhajan and get realization. Okay. Now we're on chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. So I'm just going to read the English. We've done a lot of Sanskrit today. Shaunika Muni asked, again, we're back to the sages speaking with and inquiring from Sutta Goswami. Shaunika Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Yudhisthira, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. He, again, let's see what that means. He could not enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. Unrestricted. Yudhisthira was the greatest of all men of religion. In fact, he's the son of Dharmaraj, the non-different from Dharmaraj, the personality of religion. Thus, he was not at all inclined to fight with his cousins for the sake of enjoying the kingdom. He fought for the right cause because the kingdom of Hastinapur was his rightful inheritance and his cousins wanted to usurp it for themselves. He fought, therefore, for the right cause under the guidance of Krishna, but he couldn't enjoy the results of his victory because his cousins were killed in the fight. So he had, like Arjun said, what's the use of winning the war if everybody that we would want to share our winning with are all arrayed here on the battlefield. We're going to kill them. He therefore ruled over the kingdom as a matter of duty, assisted by his younger brothers. This inquiry was important for Shonika, who wanted to know about the behavior of Yudhisthira when he was at ease to enjoy the kingdom. But he didn't. It was just a sense of duty. Sutta Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased after reestablishing Maharaj Yudhisthira in his own kingdom and after restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. So what does that mean? The bamboo fire of anger. Let's look for the word bamboo in the purport. See, bamboos, when the air moves and the wind comes, the bamboos kind of brush against each other, and sometimes the friction causes a fire which can envelop the entire forest.
What's the name of this chapter?
The name of this chapter is Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. He's finally going. He was going to go before he had to save Maharaj Pariksit. Then he was going to go before Kunti's prayers. Then he was going to go, but then Maharaj Yudhisthira was lamenting. And then he went to see Bhishma, and now he's going to go. So the world is compared to a forest fire caused by the cohesion of bamboo bushes. And such a forest fire takes place automatically, for bamboo cohesion occurs without external cause. Similarly, the material world, the wrath of those who want to lord it over material nature, anger, interacts, all the wraths, all the angers interact, and the fire of war takes place, exhausting the unwanted population. As Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna takes all the sinful people and does mass massacre by creating a war. Such fires or wars take place, and the Lord has nothing to do with them on one side, because he wants to maintain the creation. But because he wants to maintain the creation, he desires the mass of people to follow the right path, which enables the living entity to enter the kingdom of God. And so he does all these things like wars. Okay. Maharaj Yudhisthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishma Dev and Lord Krishna, see, so here is really where he got his guidance from, because he was enlightened on the religious principles, religious duties of a king and others, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brothers. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, listen to this, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessity of man and profusion. This is what a good international government does. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. The rivers, ocean, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. Oh, isn't that amazing? It's not even talking about people. It's talking about the rivers and the hills and the mountains. They paid their tax. Let's find out about that. I've never heard of that before. So Yudhisthira was under the protection of Ajita, Krishna, as above mentioned. The properties of the Lord, namely the rivers, oceans, hills, forests, etc., were all pleased. And they used to supply their respective quota to the tax. In other words, it wasn't that a dead river paid its tax, but the river deity, the creeper's deity. The secret of success, thus, is to take refuge under the protection of the Lord. Without his sanction, nothing is possible. To make economic development by our own endeavors on the strength of tools and machinery is not all. Sanction of the Lord must be there. So because of the kings having no enemy, Ajatasattu, the living beings were not at any time disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. Sri Hari, the Lord Sri Krishna, resided in Hastinapur for a few months to pacify. So then he did stay. He was, he listened to Kunti's prayers. He wanted to help out Yudhisthira, so he stayed for a few months, although previously he was just climbing on his chariot, isn't that? At the beginning of the 8th chapter. To pacify his relatives and please his own sister Subhadra. So he was to start for Dwarka, his own kingdom, after the battlefield, but to oblige the request of Yudhisthira and show mercy to Bhishma Dev, he stopped at Hastinapur, the capital of the Pandavas. He wanted to pacify the aggrieved king and to please Subhadra, the sister of Krishna. Subhadra was especially to be pacified because she lost her only son, Abhimanyu, who was just married. And Abhimanyu is the wife of Uttara. And Uttara is the mother of King Parikshit. So he wanted to pacify all of them. So the Lord is always pleased to satisfy his devotees in any capacity. Only the devotees can play the parts of his relatives. Afterwards, the Lord asked permission to depart, and the king gave it. The Lord offered his respects to Yudhisthira by bowing down because he was a younger cousin. So he observed the Naralila etiquette. And the king embraced him. After this, the Lord, being embraced by others and receiving their obeisances, so some he embraced, some he got obeisances, some he gave obeisances according to the particular relationship. Then he got on his chariot. At that time, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yayutsu, Kripacharya, Nakula, Sahadev, Bhimasen, Tomya, and Satyavati all nearly fainted because it was impossible for them to bear separation from Lord Krishna. Just like the other day we were reading about Jayadev Goswami, how once they saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they thought, how can we, and then he disappeared. How can we live now without him, his darshan? So 11 and 12, the intelligent who have understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and have become free from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation? For they had been intimately associated with his person, seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. It was intolerable for them. All their hearts were melting for him in the pot of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. The female relatives, whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna, came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears would cause misfortune at the time of his departure. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapur, different types of drums, mridanga, dol, nagara, dundubi, played during the Rasa Leela, and nobody played it. It just played from the sky. And flutes of different types, the veena, gomaka, and bedi. Bedi also, bedi and dundubi were the two instruments that played automatically by themselves during the Rasa Leela. They all sounded together to show him honor. Out of loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace and, smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers on the Lord. And then in the purport, Prabhupada is going to discuss the importance of men and women not mixing inordinately and inappropriately. That's why out of shyness, the shyness is a natural protection for women. They went up onto the roof. Here Prabhupada says this shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex and enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family, and even if they're less attractive. Isn't that interesting? Shyness is an attractive feature. We have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. Half-naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, but a shy sweeper's wife commands respect from all. Because today everyone's so crazy anyway. Oh, okay, so they may be attracted to a half-naked woman, but they're not going to have respect. Lust. That's why Prabhupada said his own mother, even when she was going to visit a neighbor, that means close by person, that she would be carried on a palanquin by 4 men with the curtains on the side so that no lusty man could look at her. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, who was the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and jewels. That's one of the paintings that we did, which is this. You can see Uttara there in the sari with that she looks fat, but she's pregnant, and you can see Arjuna holding the umbrella. So it wasn't an ordinary umbrella for rain, but it was for the sun. And it was embroidered with lace and pearls and had a handle of jewels. Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans. And the Lord, as master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. Don't know what that means, and there's no purport. I guess I can only speculate that the flowers were on his seat of the chariot. It was being heard here and there that the benedictions being paid to Krishna were neither befitting nor unbefitting, because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. So the Brahmins, priests would bless him. See, the benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being. And they were also unfitting because he's absolute and doesn't need anybody's benediction. So it's now 10:57. We're on verse 20, about to begin verse 20. And we're going to end here and ask if there's any questions. Vasanti, are there any in the chat box? 2020, everybody remember 20. Hare Krishna Vinodini, welcome. You came just when Krishna's leaving Hastinapur to go back to his own place, Dwarka. Any questions? No questions? 1, 2, 3. Okay, Panchakalpacharubhyascha Kripasinubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo. I have no potency when I speak, and even when I read an actual book which has all the potency, I'll diminish it. But Rupa Manjari is here, and Guru Manjari is here, and so they're blessing the whole place. They're here because they're in the screen. Gaur Premanand.